Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Heroes of the Storm. She's been out for a little while, so I figure it's about time I go ahead and do something on her. It's Jaina Proudmoore, the most recent hero to be added to Heroes of the Storm. So, of course, as usual, we will go through all of her abilities and talents. And, of course, we'll get you some gameplay as well. For now, starting off as usual, take a look at the skins. This is the base Jaina skin, and the variants on color as well. And her master skin, which I remember owning this set once in World of Warcraft. This one seems the most natural color. I'm not sure why it's the second color. By the time you get this, though, you're level 10, so you've got all the colors, but it just seems weird for this to be the default. This is kind of odd to me. And we have the holiday-themed Winterveil Jaina, which not only has the snowflakes on the staff, but one of her ults, the water elemental, actually becomes a snowman, so there's a little bit more to it than just the skin, which is quite nice. Alright, that's a look at Jaina's skins. Let's go ahead and look at her talents and abilities.
You'll find no greater mage on Azeroth, I assure you.
Jaina comes to Heroes of the Storm as a ranged assassin. She is using a Frost Mage kit from World of Warcraft with all of the standard classic abilities that are associated with it, including a Frostbolt, Blizzard, Cone of Cold, and also her Water Elemental, and she has a Ring of Frost based on which ultimate you decide to pick.
Sounds good.
Jaina's abilities have a high amount of synergy. She adds her trait, Frostbite, to all of her attacks. This causes all your abilities to chill targets. It slows movement speed by 25%, and it amplifies the damage from your follow-up abilities by 50%. So you get 50% critical strikes as long as the enemy is chilled. What this means is you can rotate your abilities. As long as you handle your cooldowns right, you could basically hit with one ability that doesn't crit, and then all your follow-up abilities will. So she doesn't start off with an initial heavy hitting hit, so like Nova has a lot of her damage front-loaded, for example. Nova is a mage that specializes in bursting an opponent down right from the beginning of combat. Jaina is a mage that's there to basically burst you down after the beginning part of combat. So the first part of combat will slow you down, and that means that Jaina is excellent for trying to chase down some pesky enemies because they can't move very quickly, and she'll be constantly putting out crits. And she can do this on an area of effect scale. The best part about this trait is that because it's a slow, it synergizes with other assassins that have the Executioner ability. Now, Jaina does not get Executioner on her talent, which makes sense since she basically has a built-in Executioner on her abilities. This trait is basically like a built-in Executioner, so she doesn't need it. In fact, it would probably be overkill if she did. But it means that she can allow other characters that have it to proc it. So you can synergize your group with Jaina to just do an insane amount of damage. Jaina's first ability is a Frostbolt. It costs 30 mana as a 4-second cooldown. This is going to be your major nuke. It is the highest damage ability that you have, and it is also the lowest cooldown that you have, the others being 15 and 10. This is basically, I could almost describe it as her auto attack, but she has her own auto attack. I'll go ahead and toggle the minions. I'll show off Frostbolt, and that's basically all it is. It is a bolt of frost that goes forward in a line. It hits the first target it comes into contact with, and then stops. So if I hit Arthas here, you'll see it hits him, and then it stops. It doesn't pierce. But you'll notice that she also has her own basic attack. It doesn't hit very hard. The whole idea is to basically get your trait down and then hit with Frostbolt. Now, what you may notice is that Frostbolt's cooldown is 4 seconds. Your trait lasts for 4 seconds. So you're not going to be able to chain Frostbolts without certain talents in order to get the crit. But if I hit with, say, another ability, and then hit with Frostbolt, and you'll see there it crit and did extra damage. This is what Jaina excels at. Her second ability is Blizzard. 75 mana, 15-second cooldown. You bombard an area with 2 waves of ice, and it does a moderate amount of damage each. Enemies' damage are chilled. As you can see, I say moderate, it's actually fairly high. Here at level 1, you have 66 on Frostbolt, you have 55 on Blizzard, so you can see that it actually is not that much less. And since it hits twice, it actually does more damage than Frostbolt, but you can't really count on it to hit twice. So I'll go ahead and show it off here in the lane. It's got a decent amount of a radius here, and as you can see, it's got a decent amount of cast range too. But I'll throw it here on top of Arthas. You can see it hits once, and then there's a few seconds delay between the two. So the chances of hitting both waves of Blizzard on a player is usually going to be pretty low. You might get lucky and put it down in a team fight, in which case, yes, then you will definitely do more damage than your Frostbolt. Not only that, but because it hits twice, Blizzard will put chill down on the first hit. You'll notice here the first hit, no crit, second hit, crits. So Blizzard will crit with itself. This makes this a fantastic wave clearing ability. If there's anything that Jaina does particularly well, not only is it single target damage, but it is wave clear. Her damage output is fairly high. But she is fairly bursty, and she's fairly fragile. So this means that while she can take this line here, for example, and nearly clear it out, at higher levels she will clear it out, she can't really jungle very well, though. Simply because, while she can put out the burst damage, she can't really sustain it compared to the damage she'll be taking in. So you can't really hit a jungle camp too hard without it fighting right back. The final ability Jaina has is Cone of Cold. It is a 50 mana, 10-second cooldown. You can see it does about 66 damage, so this is the weakest ability that Jaina has. 10-second cooldown, so it's kind of in the middle, right? It's around mid-range damage, well, actually low-end damage, but mid-range cooldown. I'll go ahead and show it off here. Here's the cone. I'll go ahead and use it here. But what it seems really great at is getting a group of enemies with the chill status. Let me go ahead and toggle those back off. So you can put out Cone of Cold, and then you can put out Blizzard. So Cone of Cold, and then Blizzard, and you've just done a massive AoE with a whole bunch of crit damage. And again, the whole point of Jaina is to basically cycle your cooldowns. Frostbolt hits the hardest, but it's also the one that you probably will lead off on just because of the short cooldown. If you were fighting, say, a single target, you can go in, start an encounter with Frostbolt because of the slow cooldown, get him with a Cone of Cold, throw the Blizzard on top of them, and then by then you've got another Frostbolt. So you can see it's all about weaving your spells in and out. You don't have to start with Frostbolt if you're hitting a group of enemies, or maybe you're not confident in hitting that skill shot. Maybe they've got a minion in the way. You could always start with Blizzard or Cone of Cold and then just chain them out together. That, though, is really going to probably be your maximum chain, just because short cooldown, and then high cooldown. So you're basically going to go out. And by then, hopefully, you'll have your Frostbolt again. But of course, you notice if you do it too quickly, the Cone of Cold won't come back up by the time you need it again. So if you wait a few more seconds, you might be able to get a Cone of Cold and then maybe even another Frostbolt. You won't get another Blizzard usually by the time your second rotation comes around. But obviously, I mean, we're talking about doing a perfect rotation in a vacuum. This isn't like doing a raid or anything. Your enemies are always going to be moving, and obviously you have to make your decisions based on what's happening at the time. If you really need a big hit, then you're going to want to use your Frostbolt when you can. Blizzard, you have to always keep in mind that you may not get that second hit, but you will probably get the first hit because it comes down pretty quick. Alright, so now that we've talked about her basic abilities, how her mechanics work, and how you'll probably be fighting with her, let's take a look at her ultimates. Alright, at level 10, Jaina has two ultimates. She has the Ring of Frost, and she has Summon Water Elemental. We'll take a look at Ring of Frost first. So looking at the damage levels here, since I have it up to level 30, I can kind of show you exactly what type of damages you're looking at here. You're looking at about 530 on a Frostbolt, so with a 50% crit, you're looking at about maybe 700 damage, maybe 800 damage. So it doesn't hit quite as hard as Nova, but she can get pretty close, and she can sustain the damage a lot longer than Nova can. Blizzard at 490, of course you can double that to about 1,000 damage if you hit with both of them, and Cone of Cold sits at 430, so stays fairly low across the board. Our Ring of Frost is a 100-second cooldown, and it costs 70 mana. After a short delay, you create a ring of frost at the target location. It does 920 damage, again level 30, and roots the enemies for 3 seconds. The ring persists for 3 seconds afterwards, chilling any enemies who touch it. I'll go ahead and throw one down and kind of show it off. You see the delay, and then there's the blow up. And now it's sitting there and lingering and chills anything inside of it. This is a massive AoE ability. As you can see, it hits pretty hard, 920 when it explodes. So I'll go ahead and throw it off on the enemies here. But not only that, but the explosion will root the enemy for 3 seconds so they can't get away from you. And even if you don't get them right in the ring, the fact that it chills enemies that walk into it means you're going to be able... Okay, there it is. And you're just kind of showing off just what kind of burst damage Jaina can do. You can see that Arthas walked away with like half his health missing, which is fairly impressive considering I haven't chosen all my talents. It's a big amount of damage. Now, the one thing I have noticed, you may have noticed there too when I hit Arthas with it, is sometimes it seems somewhat unreliable as to when it freezes. I've had it freeze and I've had it not freeze. I'm not sure what the criterion is. Let's go ahead and put it down, and you'll see Arthas didn't actually get frozen in place there. Let's go ahead and clear the cooldowns. I want to try and get this to freeze him in place. It could be that he's got something that stops it. Let's try it again. Okay, you know what I think it is? The center of the ring doesn't count. I have to admit, it's not something I've paid too much attention to, so it's a good thing we're noticing it now. So we're going to clear the cooldowns. What we're going to do is we're going to put him on the edge of the ring. There it is. Alright. So, please keep that in mind. It was something that I actually didn't think about and didn't... I really didn't think about it before this. So you have to give this outer ring is the only thing that's going to chill. So if you want to hit something in the center, you're going to want to put them on the edge. But here's the good thing about that is even if you don't get an enemy with this ability, right? Even if you don't directly hit them with it, you're basically encasing them in a ring that either if they see it coming, they have to decide, am I going to try and leave it? And if they do, they're probably going to get hit by it, in which then you're going to do the 900 damage and you're going to freeze them in place. Or they stay still, wait for it to blow up, and then try and leave it. If they try and leave it, they're going to get chilled, in which case all your other abilities are just going to crit. If you're already hitting them with frost before you put down the Ring of Frost, if they try to leave, that 920 is going to crit on them. Clearing cooldowns. Let's just throw Arthas a nice big crit so you can kind of see exactly how that's going to look. Here, alright, Arthas. I'm going to basically put some cold on you. And then there, you saw 1,300 damage. And you can just see the lingering effects of that, and he's just not going to get away.
Sounds interesting.
So even though the entire ring is not a damage zone, you can kind of see how it would be useful to control enemy movements. And even if you don't try and put it around an enemy, if you're trying to escape and you put it down, you either have a chance of rooting them or chilling them, which allows you to get away, or will prevent them from getting away. So you can actually put it behind the enemy if you think they're about to run away to get them chilled. There are many uses of this ability. It is a very nice utility ultimate. And the fact that it hits like a truck doesn't hurt. Alright, let's go ahead and look at level 20 exactly what we can do with this. You get Cold Snap. The center of the ring will also explode with frost after the first ring expires. So, just now we kind of said, hey, that center of the ring doesn't do damage. Well, now it will. But you can't exactly, you have to wait a while for it. So you do this, the outer ring explodes, you have to wait the 3 seconds, and then finally, boom, the inner ring explodes. So if the enemy thinks that they're safe inside the center of this ring for a while, and they try not to leave, if you get this modifier, you can do additional damage. So what this means is, the way this is set up, you have a possibility of doing that 920 damage twice. If you're lucky enough, you can hit them with the edge of the ring, and then possibly hit them with the center of the ring as well. But to be honest, the statistical chances of that happening, not entirely high. And a smart enemy that knows how that Ring of Frost works well, they're not going to get hit by that twice. And that's part of the reason I provide this, so even if you don't buy Jaina, you at least know how her mechanics work. So when you see her Ring of Frost, you don't have to panic immediately. You can say, oh, she has a safe zone in the center of this ring if I don't leave it. But of course, keep in mind, once you hit level 20, that center zone may not be safe anymore. It really depends on how they want to build. Alright, the second ultimate Jaina gets is the Summon Water Elemental. This is a 80-second cooldown, so a shorter cooldown, 75 mana. You summon a water element at a target location. It does 230 damage and chills nearby enemies. The water elemental's base attacks will then splash for 25% damage and chill. So this is fantastic in the fact that it's an extra source of chill and is an extra source of damage. Let's go ahead and take a look here at level 30 just what it does. Now when you summon it, that 230 doesn't seem like a lot. But that's only when you summon it. It does damage in an area. So I'll go ahead and do it now. You'll see, boom, there's the summon. And it's doing 245 damage to Arthas. And it's chilling him, so I can sit here and hit him with a whole bunch of my own abilities. And do additional damage. And the snowman will chase him down. Now you can control the snowman a little bit, which I'm doing right now. Well, this is the water elemental. It happens to be a snowman for this skin. But you can control him by hitting the R key again and then clicking where you want to go. So you can summon him and say, okay, I want you to hit him. So I can summon Arthas. Now, what if I want him to ignore Arthas? Well, I can do that. Hit that tower. Nope, hit that tower. There you go. So you just hit R and you can actually just click on the ground to make the water elemental move. So this particular ultimate doesn't have as much utility behind it. But this is most assuredly the one that's going to give you a lot of damage because you don't have to worry about an unreliable targeting center. And you don't have to worry about really hitting with it. Like, you don't have to summon it on top of an enemy. You can summon it somewhere else, but have it chase someone. And it can be a great deterrent. People might see that thing coming and not want to deal with it, not want to take the extra damage, they might run away. You're also chilling them the entire time. So you can possibly chase somebody with your water elemental while doing damage to someone else. And it will also, it just, in general, increases your damage just because of that additional chill. You don't have to worry about managing cooldowns when you're using this elemental. So it is a really powerful one. And it gets even more powerful when you get up to level 20, because then you get Wintermute. The water elemental will now mimic your basic abilities for half the damage. And the cast range is increased by 50%. So you can now see I can cast him a lot further.
On the way.
So you want to talk about a serious amount of damage? Let's go ahead and put this elemental down.
Servant of Neptulon.
And then I'm going to have him cast Blizzard with me. And then seeing he did Cold. There we both did Frostbolt. It seems like the one thing he doesn't do is Blizzard. Actually, he will do Frostbolt, as you can see. Now what's interesting is there you can also see his targeting reticle. You'll notice they will cross wherever my icon is. So he will try his best to target what you're targeting. Which again, that leads to a large amount of damage. He's only going to do half of what you do, and of course, it doesn't seem like he's affected by the trait. Let's just go ahead and see what happens here if we... Yeah. I do not believe he is affected by the trait. But even if he isn't, you can see that it's a nice chance to double up any ability that you want and do additional damage with it. Keeping in mind that you don't get Blizzard, but you do get Frostbolt. Oh! Maybe you do. Now he uses it. He wasn't using it earlier. Let's clear that cooldown again. Ladies and gentlemen, you have to forgive me. I've been... Okay, now he's doing it. You all saw that he didn't do it earlier, but now he is. So apparently he waits for yours to end, though. So I'm going to hit that. Okay, he apparently waited until mine was done to cast his own, which I think if I were to cast Blizzard and then cast something else, let's see if he casts Blizzard afterwards. Yes, he does. So that's a good way to put down a continual amount of AoE. So if you're in a group fight, this could lead to even more group damage than the Ring of Frost. But the Ring of Frost has a little more utility in that it is a guaranteed big area that the enemy will have to walk through, and it can be a very big deterrent. And it just has it's one massive hit. Both of these ultimates are actually quite useful. Keep in mind that the snowman can be killed, so that is one downside to the snowman. Even though he can potentially put out a lot of damage because he mimics your abilities, he can be destroyed. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, I do apologize again that I didn't have all the information on all of her abilities. I've been using her for a while, and there were just certain things I hadn't quite confirmed yet, and now we have. So there you go. Okay, let's take a look at Jaina's talents, and this is one of the things I really like about Jaina, and I'm hoping that they kind of continue forward with some of this. She has some of the most unique talents than I've seen on some of the heroes. Almost everything she has is specific to her. She has a very, very minimal amount of generic talents. So on the first level, first tier, we have Conjurer's Pursuit, which is one of the base talents. This one is the increased mana generation by 0.5 per second, and every 3 globes will grant an additional 0.25 mana per second. This is a relatively new change, the increased mana regeneration by 0.5. It used to be it didn't give you that, it only gave you regeneration after collecting orbs, but they wanted to add the ability they wanted Conjurer's Pursuit to feel good when you picked it up, not just having to wait for 3 globes before it did anything. They felt like that didn't feel good. So that is a fairly recent change, but the underlying effect is it's still pretty much the same. Every 3 globes you get more mana regeneration. That's pretty nice. You can get quite a bit of mana, but I think she's got a better mana regeneration talent if that's what you're looking for. It's at level 4. Alright, so let's go ahead and look at the others for now. You have 2 really good options here for your trait. You have Deep Chill. This increases the slow of chill from 25% to 35%. Especially useful for stopping enemies from getting away, stopping enemies from chasing if you want to. And again, because of the synergy with Executioner, this can be quite useful to your group. Even more so, though, is the lingering duration. Increases the slow of the chill, or the duration of the chill, from 4 to 6 seconds. What this means is that you can combo Frostbolt with itself, because it's only got a 4-second cooldown. 4-second cooldown, hit it again, and you've just comboed with yourself. It really depends on how good you are at keeping that chill on them. If you're good at keeping the chill on them, you may want to increase the slow amount. If you're not, you may want to do the duration. I've found that the duration I usually use for builds that I focus around AoE centric, whereas the slow amounts is when I focus around single target. The slow amount can be very useful if you decide to pick up the snowman. I'm sorry, water elemental. Snowman, water elemental. Do you want to build a snowman? Yeah, she will make Frozen references. If you go with the water elemental, Deep Chill is probably your best bet because you don't need the additional duration, because the water elemental will continue putting a chill on the enemy. The last talent of this range is Winter's Reach. It increases the range of Frostbolt by 30%. This can be useful, and you can build around your Frostbolt. Let's go ahead and we'll do what we've done last time. We'll kind of measure it here using these bushes. So I'm going to go out right about here just to where it's not transparent. We'll see it just shy of getting to the flowers that are right here. We get the Winter's Reach, and it goes just a little bit beyond. So that range increase is really not that far. I would honestly venture to say you're probably better off getting something else. However, in a pinch, with an enemy running away, that tiny bit of reach can sometimes secure a kill. Alright, level 4. This is where you can get a little bit of synergy with, say, the increased range on Winter's Reach here for your Frostbolt. Here you can get Frost Shards. The Frostbolt will now pierce the first target and hit an additional target behind them.
I'll take care of it.
It only pierces once. I'll go ahead and pick it so you can see it here. This allows you to hit up to 2 targets, which can be useful in a scenario where, say, Arthur's here, he's kind of hiding behind this minion here. I wouldn't be able to hit him normally, but I can just do this. And there, I actually hit him that time. But you will see that it only pierces once, and it will pierce for the duration. So I will hit him, and I will hit the guy behind him. And that's as far as it goes. So you only get 2 targets, but that is fairly useful, depending upon... Again, this is very situational, and honestly, a lot of these talents are, and I like that. I mean, they're more situational than some of the other characters I've seen, which is, again, why I like her. The second ability at level 4 is Snowstorm. It increases the radius of your blizzard. Here's a standard blizzard. As you can see, it's got a fairly decent range. If we go ahead and use our measuring bushes, that's going to be the official name now. You can see it goes around, kind of hits in between 2 bushes there. If I pick up this talent, we can see that the radius increases, and it goes about halfway through between the others. So that's a pretty good jump. This will pretty much guarantee you clearing an entire line of minions. So if I go ahead and clear my cooldown, wait for the minions to come my way. I'll go ahead and put it down. You can see I can hit the entire lane without difficulty. If you want to go for lane clearance, that's the perfect talent to get. All right, before going on to Arcane Intellect, let's go ahead and just go over Envenom real fast, because that's a pretty standard, another one of the generic ones. Again, she doesn't have very many, but this one's pretty standard here. It's a typical assassin talent. You put down a poison on an enemy, it does 420 damage over 6. I do believe that number does scale up. What I have noticed with Envenom, it is very powerful early game, but it tends to drop out kind of in the later game, especially against tanks. I've tried hitting tanks with Envenom, and it just doesn't really seem to do a lot. It barely seems to touch him. The one good thing about Envenom, though, is because it is a dot, it prevents enemies that can cloak from cloaking again. So that can be kind of useful. But honestly, her other talents are just so much better for this tier, for rank 4. I really would suggest either getting your AoE increase on your Blizzard or getting Arcane Intellect. Arcane Intellect is one of my favorites. You will never run out of mana with this talent. Dealing damage to a chilled target returns mana to Jaina. Basic attacks will return 5 mana. Abilities return 25. So let's look at what they cost. Frostbolt is 30. You're basically spending Frostbolt for 5 mana. Blizzard costs 75. If I get 25 back on Blizzard for the first hit, if it hits twice, I'm getting 50 back. So I'm just spending, what, 25 on that. Cone of Cold is 50 mana. So I'm basically getting half of that mana cost. You are basically slashing your standard abilities in half with mana cost. Your Frostbolt is practically free, because you do have a passive mana regeneration. Mana per second is about 3.49 at this level, which means if I hit someone with Frostbolt, it only costs me 5 mana. In 1 second, I've got that mana back, practically. So I have eventually run out of mana before with Arcane Intellect, but I had basically stayed out in combat probably for 15 to 20 minutes at a time. You are super sustainable with this. If you don't have to worry about healing, if you play fairly passively, you will never have to go back, because you will always have mana. It's as simple as that. Level 7, we have Frostbitten as a trait modifier. This will increase the damage bonus of Frostbite from 50% to 65%. So if you're looking to do a massive amount of damage to targets, this is really where you're looking. Frostbitten is fantastic for that. You can basically just absolutely nuke down enemies. This is one of my favorites for AoE builds. Really what I like to do when I'm going AoE, because I'm not spamming Frostbolt as much, is go for the increased duration so that I will have more chances to do my crits. Usually get the radius, and in this case I will get the additional damage bonus. That especially will clear a lane like it doesn't even exist. A lane will come up, you'll hit them with Blizzard, and that additional damage will just absolutely wreck the lane. It's gone. And that's even spectacular in a group fight. You can get Frost Armor. Frost Armor is enemy heroes that attack you are chilled. Every 8 seconds, you can also block a basic attack from an enemy hero, which reduces its damage by 75%. So this is a mechanic that exists in the form of just regular block for other characters, but you'll notice it's a slight different one here. It has a constant chill effect which means enemies that attack you will be chilled, which means you can then do more damage. So if someone gets to jump on you, they're chilled, so you can just start pouring out the damage. It also modifies the basic block mechanic. Basic block will block 2 hits for 50% damage each. This one will only block 1 hit for 75 on an 8-second cooldown, which can still be pretty powerful. I mean, let's assume that you're fighting a Nova and they've got the armor-piercing shells, which makes them only fire every 3 seconds. If by chance you're lucky enough to only get hit once and you haven't procced your frost armor yet, you've just reduced that Nova's damage down to 75%. So if you're fighting a Nova and they're building in that way, building in that high damage burst, that can help you. It's actually quite useful. Ice flows. Ice flows will double the width of Cone of Cold and cause each target hit to reduce its cooldown by half a second. Not bad. Let's go ahead and take a look at the basic Cone of Cold. Here it is.
Let's get going.
Maybe show it off in my bushes here. You can kind of see. Goes out to here. Trickles out a bit. Let's go ahead and get ice flows. And what you will see is that it doesn't go out further, but it covers pretty much almost a 90-degree arc. It's not quite 90 degrees, as you can see here. And when I hit the entire lane, you can see it brought it down to about a 7-second cooldown. There's about 7 enemies. Just toggle them again. Oh, hold on. Too many. There we go. 3, 4, 5, 6, yeah, 7 enemies. So that's about 3.5 seconds off. With Arthas makes 8, so that's 4 seconds off. That's assuming I hit them all. I did not hit the last one. Fairly nice. It seems fairly nice, right? The additional width is nice that you can really get a large area, but even on my AoE builds, this is not really one I go for. The reduced cooldown, certainly, yeah, that's great, but again, you have to keep in mind that relies on you hitting a lot of targets. And considering that Cone of Cold is your weakest ability, this is a talent I personally do not care for. Your damage bonus is probably going to be better for you in the long run. Or, if you're going single target, I recommend Ice Lance. Ice Lance, the cooldown of Frostbolt, is reduced by 2 seconds if it impacts a chilled target. Please keep in mind that Frostbolt is a 4-second cooldown. This means that you will only have 2 seconds. That means you can very easily chain your combo with Frostbolt. You hit him with something like a Cone of Cold, and then you hit him with Ice Lance. Now here's the beautiful thing, is I picked up the talent for, not Winter's Reach, but Pierce Targets. We're going to see if it basically entirely resets the cooldown. It does not. It was still 2 seconds.
I'll take care.
Let's go ahead and hit that one, too, and then we'll hit him again, and that's 2 seconds. So there you go. It seems like it would work, right? Because the talent basically says the cooldown of Frostbolt is reduced by 2 seconds if it impacts a chilled target. Well, you have to keep in mind that impact is the important part. It's a lot like Nova. When she has Snipe, the first target it hits is considered the impact zone. Even if you get a talent that pierces through every enemy. There's another talent that allows it to do additional damage in an area, but only at the impact site. That's how Nova works. Jaina is very much the same way. So I'll go ahead, I missed my chance there. Reset it again, and we'll just confirm one more time that you'll see that even though I've got 2 chilled targets, I hit both of them, but the cooldown only is affected by 1 target hit. So we'll go back here, hit it, boom, I hit 2 targets, but I still had to wait for the cooldown of my ability. So Ice Lance, well, it seems like it would pair very nicely with Winter's Reach. Honestly, not one I typically go for. But hey, it can still be effective for you because the cooldown is still reduced either way. So if you're fighting and that scenario comes up, as I mentioned before, where you have a minion blocking your target, you'll still get the cooldown as long as that minion was chilled as well. But that could be an issue if you don't have the chill on them first, which means you'll probably have to lead off with either a Blizzard or Cone of Cold. So this right here, this talent right here could very well change the way you do your rotation. You might still start off with Frostbolt because 4 seconds is fairly short, but you could very easily start off with Cone of Cold, then go into Frostbolt, then go into Blizzard, then go back to Frostbolt, and just continually spam Frostbolt as you go forward. At level 13, we have one generic talent in the form of Sprint. I actually see a lot of Jainas pick this one up, even though I don't typically pick it up myself, although it's very nice for an escape mechanism. Jaina really has no ways of escaping. She can chill, sure, but there's a lot of characters that have chasing mechanics or abilities that will allow them to continue pursuit even with a chill. And basically characters kind of like an Illidan or a Tyrael who's got his ult on, or there's a few characters that could do it, but Sprint would allow you to basically increase the distance between you and the enemy chasing you, which may allow you to actually get past the range, the threshold that their chasing mechanics will allow them to chase you to. This gives you a 75% additional movement speed for 3 seconds. And you have to keep in mind, too, this can also be used offensively if you're chasing someone down. Of course, your innate ability to chill usually means you don't have to. This is better off, honestly, used as an escape. And again, I see a lot of Jainas pick it up. It can be exceptionally useful. It can keep you alive. And that's a big thing. Dead DPS is 0 DPS. However, there are some pretty nice other talents that you could pick up here. We have improved Ice Block, which I also see a fair amount of Jainas get. It has never really been quite my favorite, although with a good group, this could save your life. So this is, again, another generic talent that's been modified in some way, and this is something I really like about Jaina. They've taken the basic mechanics of certain things and changed them around a little bit to make it uniquely her. Other characters can get Ice Block. Now this is something they added before. It basically makes you immune to damage for 3 seconds. It's what Ice Block has always done in World of Warcraft. Well, Jaina's a Frost Mage, so she obviously had to have it, but they still wanted to make it hers. In this case, you place yourself in stasis, you gain the invulnerability for 3 seconds, but when it breaks, you chill nearby enemies. Which means, if your group has decided to help you out, like you usually would use it as a survival mechanic, right? Maybe you get jumped, and you need to wait out an ult. Let's say maybe Nova has used triple tap on you. It's a good way to get out of it. Or maybe you're just suddenly in a group, and there you can see the Ice Block. And then there we go. Everything around me has been chilled, and now I've got a bunch of damage. So you can use it to return to offense after you've survived whatever it is you need to survive. Because if they stick around, they're chilled. And then that means you're doing more damage, and it also means they can't really get away, or they will have a harder time chasing you as well. It's not perfect, but it is a very nice improvement off of basic Ice Block. Icy Veins is another staple Frost Mage ability. This works a little bit differently, but in this game, you activate it to make your basic abilities cooldowns recharge 3 times as fast and reduce their mana cost by 50% for 5 seconds. So you want to be efficient. If you've got any mana regen abilities, this will mean you're basically casting for free, quite honestly. Especially if you get Arcane Int. You pop this, you're basically throwing out as many abilities as you possibly can. You're constantly getting chills, you're constantly getting effects. I'm going to go ahead and show this. Jaina is one of the characters that's going to have abilities that I really just have to show off because they are so useful, and you really need to see these effects and how they will help you out. So we're going to grab Icy Veins here, and I'm going to go ahead and throw my stuff on cooldown really fast, and then pop Icy Veins, and then throw that out, and we can see that I just got a whole bunch of cooldowns off.
I've got a good feeling about this.
And my mana is sitting pretty good for considering how many abilities I just used. Alright, just to kind of show it off, I'm going to proc Icy Veins early this time. You can see I've Got my abilities all back pretty quickly. Now what you'll notice is that the cooldowns show their normal time. It doesn't cut the cooldowns in half, it just regenerates them faster. Which means if Icy Veins wears off, whatever number is still left will be that amount you have to wait. So you're not going to be able to cheat the system by cutting your cooldowns in half. But it also means that you can use Icy Veins after you've already used your abilities, as I've shown, because it will not reduce the cooldowns, it simply makes them go by faster. So if I've already got everything on cooldown and I need my abilities back now, that is what this allows you to do. Icy Veins is honestly it's a modified version of Rewind, if you think about it. Rewind is an ability that allows you to reset your cooldowns once. Icy Veins allows you to shorten your cooldowns immediately, which means it works fantastically well for something like Frostbolt. You get Frostbolt, you combine it with Ice Lance, that's a 2-second cooldown, which is going to come back every second while Icy Veins is up. And Icy Veins lasts for 5 seconds. That's 5 Frostbolts that you could get out in the span of Icy Veins, if you just manage your build and, of course, your skill shots just right. There is a amazing amount of potential in a good Jaina's hands. Alright, lastly we have Stormfront. Increase the cast range of Blizzard by 100%. You might not think that's too amazing. I mean, it really isn't. I mean, it's just an increased cast range, as many people will get this kind of thing. But it's 100%. I just kind of want to demonstrate this. I can basically cast out here to this final bush here, which is really nice. It's really good range, and it's an AoE. That's fantastic. But sometimes there's characters that are a bit further out that you really want to hit, and you just don't have the range otherwise. Like here, Frostbolt, yeah, it'll get you out there, but it's a single hit. It may not be a deterrent because the enemy knows it's going to be on a cooldown. Let's say Sergeant Hammer, for example. That's a big one. This is one that I really love this talent for, because Sergeant Hammer has a range that's usually extended a little bit beyond what you can achieve. You might be able to get in there, get a hit on Hammer, but Hammer will probably get a hit on you. Well, let's take a look at exactly how far this goes, right?
Curious.
All the way over here. That is about the range of Sergeant Hammer. You can put a Blizzard down on Sergeant Hammer, one that doesn't have graduating range. Let's keep that in mind, because graduating range will start to outstripe you. But a standard Hammer, you should be able to hit without walking into their range. And that's 2 hits there. Granted, the first hit will not crit, but the second hit will, and it's still quite a bit of damage. And you could go on to level 16, which adds an additional wave to your Blizzard, which is definitely a threat, because then that's 2 crits that they're going to have to take. I'll just go ahead and show that off now while we're talking about it. We're going to add that additional wave. So here you have the additional range, and this also is great because let's say the enemy is focusing you down. It allows you to go in and do damage at a range that most enemies cannot retaliate against. This will basically give you a large amount of in general, poke is what it's usually referred to. So poke in these games is the ability to hit damage on an enemy, hopefully, usually, unretaliated damage. What it means is you're just kind of going out and you're kind of prodding them a little bit. You're doing damage over time. The intent is not to kill them. The intent is to weaken them slowly over time. It's especially useful for enemies that have kind of cheap death mechanics that might be able to restore a lot of health right away, or if they've taken a lot of damage in a short amount of time and then pull it back. It's very useful for kind of chipping away. And so I'll kind of show off here. 1, 2, 3. Quite a bit of damage in that. And considering here at level 16, that's doing 280, so that's 280 times 3. Over 700 damage right there. Quite a bit. I think that's 760. Please forgive me, I'm not very good at math in my head. Alright. That's fantastic. Let's look at the other level 16s. Alright, we've taken a look at Snow Crash, which adds additional wave. Let's take a look at the modifiers for your Cone of Cold. You have a couple good choices here. You've got Northern Exposure, which is one of my favorites, especially when you're considering helping your group out. This is a lot like Pinning Shot for Nova. Northern Exposure causes your Cone of Cold to inflict vulnerable upon the enemy. This increases the damage they take by 25%. It only lasts for 2 seconds. See, now Nova's is good in that hers is modified by the slow amount, in which you can increase up to 4. So you don't get quite as much of the vulnerability with Jaina as you do for Nova, but it's still 2 seconds of the enemy taking 25 additional damage. And if you're using Icy Veins, and Ice Lance, you can basically throw in 2 Frost Bolts during that period. The other option you have for Cone of Cold is Numbing Blast. This allows Cone of Cold to root a chilled target for 1 second. So if you're trying to keep someone from getting away, that's your opportunity right there. Now you have to keep in mind, they have to be already chilled. And if they're already chilled, they might not be getting away anytime soon. But there have been times where this could be very clutch. For example, if they're about to walk through the threshold of their gate, you can stop them right before they do. Again, this will be one of those your mileage may vary kind of skills, because it really depends upon what the enemy team is doing and what your team is doing, and whether you think you're going to need it or not. If your team is really working together well, something like Northern Exposure might be good for you. If you're really concerned about doing AoE, clearing lanes, then Snow Crash can be very good. I mean, not even as AoE, but this is additional damage you can do in a single target, or stationary targets, such as buildings. Because you can just sit there and just have 3 waves of this coming down on top of those stationary targets, or maybe an objective, such as the Dragon Knight or the Terror. This is a great way of doing a bunch of damage to those big, slow-moving targets. The last talent for this tier is Ice Barrier. 25% of the damage you deal to targets with chill is returned as shields to Jaina, and they last for about 3 seconds. Now I have to admit, this is a talent I don't use, so we're going to take a look at exactly how much shields we can actually get if I chill a line and then hit them with Blizzard. And see, there you go, you can see I'm getting quite a bit of shields there. Got a good amount there. I think that was maybe about a third, no, maybe about 25% of my health. So let's just go ahead and wait for the cooldowns here. Oh, come on. Can Narthas come out to play? Do you want to build a snowman?
Let's get going.
Doesn't have to be a snowman. It could be an Arthas man. Yeah, okay. Maybe not even. Maybe 10 to 15%. So that can be useful if an enemy decides to try and fight back. It'll certainly give you a bit more protection. I would think if you're going that route, you're probably going to want to do more than just that for protections. Something like Frost Armor would also be kind of helpful there, because then you're reducing the enemy's damage with their auto attacks. This is not something I typically use, but again, I can kind of see the survivability options there. You have a few good survivability options, really, with Jaina. Unfortunately, most of them are fairly generic. I mean, well, not most of them. One of them is. That's Sprint. So you can pick up Sprint to get away. And you could pick up the Frost Armor. Ring of Frost is good for a deterrent. Ice Block will keep you alive if you don't want Sprint. So there's a few good options there. Alright, let's go ahead and take a look at level 20 real fast. We've already talked about the modifiers. These are both very nice. It's very hard, really, to say, you know, where I would go with this. I would think if you're going to go with the Water Elemental, you want to go with the Wintermute, because it's just so much more damage that you can put out with the Snowman. Well, I keep saying Snowman, sorry, because I'm on Winterveil Jaina. With the Water Elemental, you can get a lot of damage out there, especially since we've noticed that, yes, you can get a Blizzard out of him, and I just talked about how Blizzard can be exceptionally useful for doing a large amount of damage to stationary targets, and he does seem to have the triple crash when I have it. So you can do a lot of damage with your Water Elemental. Now, Cold Snap is probably the one that I could say you could probably do without, because, yeah, it does explode that inner ring, but that's usually only going to be useful if something, again, is kind of stationary, and usually you're going to be using it more as a deterrent. Really, in this case, Bolt of the Storm is probably your best bet. You could go with one of these. I would think if you're going to go Water Elemental, you want to go Wintermute. If not, Bolt of the Storm is probably your best bet, because Jaina, being a very squishy character, being a mage, you don't have very many opportunities to get away. And if you didn't get Sprint especially, this is going to be your one way of getting out of jail free card, basically. Swift Storm, decent talent, but usually not one I tend to use. It depends on the character. Like siege characters, if I want to get in there quickly and start doing a bunch of siege damage, that's usually where I want to be, because then I can go from target to target very quickly. The good news here is that you're not dismounted from taking damage. And because Jaina is, again, squishy, if you get hit off of your mount, that's usually you getting taken down quickly, especially if it's by an ambushing class like a Nova, if they're particularly good at that. So there are reasons why you would use Swift Storm, but Bolt of the Storm just seems like one of those really useful, quick escape abilities that just seems really hard to justify not getting. Really, or it's hard to justify not getting it. This is just one of those supremely useful abilities that a lot of characters really have. And quite honestly, blinks in games of this type are supremely valued. It's just that some of these ultimate modifiers are just really, really good. So, again, Water Elemental, Wintermute. Otherwise, you can get Cold Snap, probably recommend Bolt of the Storm. Well, that's everything so far. That's Jaina Proudmoore. We're going to go ahead and get you her poke quotes. Hopefully you enjoy that. Thank you very much for watching.
What's the plan? Shh, I'm trying to think here. All I ever wanted to do was study. Of course, then a giant demon smashed my home apart, so that kind of put an end to that. I wonder if my teleport spells will work here. Now, where'd that spell go? Ah, here it is. Azeroth, Metreon, Zinthos. Wait, that's not right. So forget what I said before. Now is when things are getting weird. I mean, I saw a dwarf made of candy earlier. Wait, is that a white hair? I hope that's not a bad sign. Sure is nice to get outside once in a while. Feels like I've been cooped up in a tower for years. I wonder why they call it polymorph when it always turns enemies into one thing. They should have called it something like monomorph, or that spell that turns people into sheep. I'm a sorceress, and a thumping good one, too. Do you believe in magic in a young girl's heart? Because you're encased in ice, so you probably should start. I put a spell on you because you're mine. Let's just be clear. These aren't magic tricks. They're illusions. Tricks are something you do during Hollow's End for candy. I'm sorry, what? Thrall and me? Ugh, who keeps spreading that filthy rumor? Besides, everyone knows I prefer blue over green. Not to mention the last two men who sought my attention both tried to take over the world. Yeah, I think I'd rather just study. The Horde and Alliance can coexist. I've seen it. One single event could draw us together. By the way, if you're holding on for a Frozen reference, just let it go. Oh no, what have I done? When my brother Derek was killed, my father swore an eternal oath to destroy all orcs on Azeroth. I always wonder how I would handle a loss like that. Honestly, I just pray I never have to find out.